The film begins with a scene of an egg yolk being injected with a mysterious green fluid, causing the yolk to split and form an identical copy. The scene then shifts to the Hollywood Walk of Fame, highlighting the star of celebrity Elizabeth Sparkle. As time passes, fans who once surrounded the star gradually lose interest, and Elizabeth fades into the background. Elizabeth hosts a TV aerobics show called Sparkle It Up. After being unable to use the women's restroom, she enters the men's room, where she hides upon hearing someone approaching. While hiding, she overhears the network president, Harvey, discussing plans to fire her now that she has reached 50. Later, during a lunch meeting with Harvey, who messily devours shrimp, he officially lets her go. While driving home, Elizabeth is distressed to see her billboard being removed, which distracts her and leads to a severe car accident. At the doctor's office, a nurse tells her she is a perfect candidate, after a checkup, discreetly slipping a flash drive into her jacket pocket. As she leaves, she encounters a man named Fred, who remembers her from high school and still believes she is the most beautiful woman in the world, though he comes across as overly eager. He gives her his number. Back at home, Elizabeth watches the flash drive's contents, which promote a product called the Substance. A voice explains that the substance allows users to experience life as a younger, better version of themselves, alternating between their young and old bodies every 7 days. Initially hesitant, Elizabeth, feeling lonely and nostalgic for her past fame, calls the number provided. She receives an address in response. Elizabeth gets an ID card and visits the address, a hidden building down a shady alley. There, she finds a deposit box with her number containing the substance. She returns home and injects herself with the green fluid. After some time, Elizabeth collapses in pain as a large slit opens on her back. A younger, more beautiful woman emerges from her body. The young woman sews up the wound and applies a stabilizing fluid to herself and the original body to maintain balance. This younger version of Elizabeth adopts the name Sue and quickly lands a position at Elizabeth's old network, impressing Harvey. Sue revels in the attention and enjoys an energetic first week in her new life. However, when she reverts to being Elizabeth, her life remains dull and uneventful, with her only significant activity being a return to the network to retrieve her belongings from Harvey. When Sue returns, her new fitness show is picked up for a full-time slot, with Harvey accommodating her unusual schedule. Sue then builds a hidden room in the bathroom to store Elizabeth's unconscious body. The construction noise prompts an angry neighbor to complain, but when he sees that Sue is a stunning young woman rather than Elizabeth, he awkwardly backs down and unsuccessfully flirts with her. Sue heads out for a night just hours before she needs to switch back. She brings home a guy named Troy to hook up with, but a nosebleed signals that her time has run out. Wanting more time, Sue reuses a stabilizer tube and extracts additional fluid from Elizabeth's body, allowing her to stay with Troy through the night. When Elizabeth wakes up, she notices that her right hand has aged and looks unhealthy due to the extra time spent as Sue. She calls the substance hotline and is told that the effects are irreversible, and she must maintain the balance. The operator reminds her that Sue is not a separate person, but still a part of Elizabeth. After receiving her refill kit, Elizabeth visits a diner, where she notices an elderly man with a birthmark similar to the nurse who introduced her to the substance. He warns her about the negative effects of the younger self, asking if Sue has begun to eat away at her. Terrified, Elizabeth flees, only to be yelled at by Troy, who is picking up his motorcycle from her building. Feeling desperate, Elizabeth decides to call Fred and accepts his offer for dinner. Fred eagerly makes a reservation. However, just as Elizabeth is about to leave after getting ready, she becomes distracted by the billboard for Sue's show visible from her window. She repeatedly goes back to the bathroom to apply and remove makeup, growing increasingly bitter and frustrated until she ultimately cancels the date without contacting Fred. During a taping of Sue's show, she delivers a poor take, feeling something pressing against her back. Avoiding the playback out of fear, Elizabeth walks out of the room. In the bathroom, she pushes the lump up her leg and out through her belly button, only to find that it's a whole chicken leg. Frustrated, Sue later calls the substance hotline to complain about Elizabeth's excessive drinking and eating habits, which prevent Sue from fully enjoying her life. Sue later goes to the studio, only to discover that her show's taping has been canceled. When she confronts Harvey, he tells her that she's become so popular they want her to host a New Year's Eve special. Sue agrees and ends up spending even more time away from Elizabeth than she should. When Elizabeth finally returns to her body, she has aged further, her legs barely able to function. To pass the time, Elizabeth busies herself with a French cookbook Harvey gave her as a patronizing gift, all the while growing to resent Sue, especially as she watches her mockingly discuss Elizabeth's old show on a talk show. In response to Elizabeth's repulsive habits, Sue spends 3 months extracting fluid from her body, which begins to resemble an infected sore. When Sue tries to extract the fluid one last time, it appears necrotic. She calls the hotline, only to be informed that she has exhausted her allowed usage of the young body, and the stabilizing fluid will reset once she returns to Elizabeth's form. Left with no other choice, Sue transitions back into Elizabeth's body, which has transformed into a grotesque, hunchbacked monstrosity. Elizabeth decides to stop using the substance, knowing it won't reverse her deformities but will allow her to live out her life as she is. She prepares a black fluid to inject into Sue's chest but hesitates before using the entire syringe and withdraws. Sue wakes up, coming face to face with Elizabeth, and in a fit of rage, violently attacks her. Sue repeatedly smashes Elizabeth's face into a mirror and ultimately beats her to death. Sue heads to the network to prepare for the New Year's Eve special, but her body begins to disintegrate, her front teeth fall out, her fingernails detach, and her left ear slides off. Panicking, Sue rushes home, desperate for a solution, and finds the vial of activator fluid, which was intended for a one-time use. Believing it will restore another young body, she injects herself, but instead, it spawns a horrifying creature named Monstro Elisasu, a grotesque amalgamation of limbs, teeth, breasts, and Elizabeth's face gasping from its back. Monstro goes to the network, with a poster of Elizabeth's face taped onto it and stuffed into Sue's dress. As it approaches the stage, the face falls off, revealing its terrifying appearance to the audience, including some children. Harvey tries to stop Monstro by attacking it with a mic stand, even blowing its head off, but the head regenerates. An arm falls off and sprays the audience with blood, covering the room in gore. Monstro eventually leaves the studio but collapses, splattering into a mess of flesh. From this mass, Elizabeth's original face emerges, attached to a formless body. She crawls toward her Walk of Fame star, gazing up with joy as she imagines sparkles raining down on her. Elizabeth smiles one last time before dissolving into a puddle of goo. By morning, a floor scrubber cleans away the remains, leaving no trace of Elizabeth behind. So that's the end of our movie. If you've come this far, make sure to give a thumbs up and subscribe my channel. See you later.